team leader for a business analyst team at Lloyd's. I've got a small team who I look after, and I'm actually an Agile trainer with them. I was brought in to Lloyd's to help with their Agile transformation, but before that, life started at Pfizer, where I helped with business change processes, optimising people's time. There were scientists there taking a month to do an experiment. By using business change and software, we managed to get that down to a day for them to do all the analysis work, so getting them back into the lab where they wanted to be. IDBS, where I think some people are familiar with this company, it's a scientific consultancy company, and they started getting into their Agile journey. And then Veltec, which is a digital consultancy. So when I was with them, worked with the government digital services, NHS, pharma, publishing. You never get sent somewhere where it's going well. So you learn lots of different things, and you learn lots of techniques to how to try and make it better. And that's what this talk is about. So can you stand up if you are working in an Agile environment now, please? Okay. Can you stay standing if you truly believe where you're working is Agile? Okay, brilliant. There are some people still standing. You can sit down now.
They're more Agile than you were. I was taught by this man here.
Fantastic. And that's when I got asked by Paul. So a pre-warning, whoever's coming to the conference dinner, I was asked to do this talk this time last year after I'd had a couple of glasses of wine. So be careful, because you might get caught out like I did. So when I was thinking about what can I talk about, I kind of look back at my life and where I get sent and the problems I see, and it's all very similar. You're doing Agile, we've hired you because you're Agile, but actually it's not really Agile. How can we change it? So just so I have an idea of how to sort of switch the talk to who's in the room, can you put your hands up if you're a developer? Okay, good. Can you put your hands up if you're a manager? Scrum Masters? Any coaches? Okay, good mix. So things I'm going to cover today: why do managers want Agile? Brief look at what I think Agile is. Looking at a team, aligning direction, optimising the team, and how to utilise time. So I'm going to caveat, as John had to do earlier, I'm speaking as myself. These are not what Lloyd's would say. So again, anything I say is my own opinion, and I'm not embarrassing them. So looking at why managers want Agile. As software developers, you've probably seen this picture before. Put your hand up if you recognise this. Okay, so this is Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, and it's used with software development lifeware cycles for new products, not replacing old products. And he noticed that there's sort of 5 main categories of people who will pick up software. You have your innovators. So this is when the software is very young, not really much to it. It's people who like putting stuff on open source. They're really into their new software. They love help shaping it. They love it when it's new. They love it when they can influence direction. You've got your early adopters. So they're a little bit after your innovators. They like it when there's something there. They want to be able to tweak it. They want to say, well, it'd be nice if it does a bit more of this. So they still want to be involved with the development of it, but a bit more's there for them to change. You've got the early majority. Now these people are a little bit harder to impress. Why is this going to make my life better? How is my life going to be easier to use this? And this is why you've got this gap called the chasm that Geoffrey Moore was explaining. You need to make sure that there's enough excitement, there's enough reason to pick up this product. Your late majority, okay, everyone else is using it, their life seems to be slightly better, they're slightly happier, fine, if I have to, I'll use it. And the laggards, there's something new around? What? Really? Not even noticed. And when I was at Pfizer, we brought in this technology, and it was to replace Excel. Excel is a great tool, but for IP reasons, when you're using macros, when you're sharing it, it can get a little bit dicey. You know, people are doing these graphs. Why are you doing it? Oh, my boss gave me this template. What does the calculation do? I have no idea. So we wanted a system that was a little bit better than that. So we're going around and we were doing one-on-one training with the people to get them into system, getting them happy with it. And there was one guy I had to sit with, so I was like, okay, so show me how you do your graphs. And I'm not joking. He got out a bit of graph pad paper, pencil, ruler. He wasn't even using Excel. So that was a double jump that we had to try and get him over. And that's what I mean by the laggards. So this is normally used with software, as I keep going on about. So how does this apply to Agile? And I actually think that you can use it with methodologies. Agile's been around for over 20 years. And as Alan said in his speech, you used to have the developers going, come on, let's do it, let's do it. They're in this section. They were trying to drag it into their company, kicking and screaming. And the managers were, I don't see any benefit yet. What's in it for me? Why is it better? Now, I think the developers are here with Agile and the managers are here. Come on, let's get it in. Let's start using it. And why is that? So again, in Alan's talk, there was a question of what companies do we think are Agile? And for me, these are the big players. These are the guys who I think are changing how Agile's being run. They're going to these conferences. They're presenting. We've done it quicker, faster, better by using Agile methodologies. And unfortunately, Agile isn't like a software product. You don't follow a manual. You have to adapt it to the environment and the people you're with. And that's what potentially managers aren't quite seeing. So Spotify, they've got their squads. So your squad is no more than 9 people. Then you have tribes, and then your tribes is where you have all your learning, cross-pollination. They're very agile, they're tweaking it, they're building it, they adapt to the changes. Zappos is a shoe company. It's a completely flat structure. There are no job titles. There are no managers. Something needs to be done, a team forms, they do it, they disband. That's how it works. Semco, they've got a manual of how they work. To be a manager there, you have to be nominated by your team. Your appraisal is done by the people in your team. Quite a different way of working. Foursquare, any project they do is consensus driven. Does people think it's a good idea? There's no person making that final call. It's you, it's the team. Google, you've got your 80-20 rule, open code, engineers own the code, has to be readable by all. Netflix, there are no limits on holiday days, no limits on sick days, but you better get the job done. They want to hire smart people who are willing to do anything to get the work done. Has anyone heard of Menlo? So, very interesting company. He's written a book called Joy Inc., which I would recommend to read. So he was quite disappointed by how Agile companies were working. So he set up his own company. Pair programming. Everyone rotates. It's quite similar to how Rachel was explaining how it worked at Unruly. So they rotate on a weekly basis. Open culture, open walls, everything up everywhere so you can see what's going on. Their daily stand-up is a company stand-up. So it's about 200 odd people. How long do you think it takes? 15 minutes. Because everyone knows what everyone else is doing already because you're constantly swapping who you work with. And then Valve. Very interesting concept. Open salaries. And your peers decide your salaries. So these are the companies that have been using Agile for a while. Yeah, a lot of people get nervous by that one. Some people might find it beneficial. So your managers are seeing successes like this, but they haven't seen the process. They don't know what they've had to go through to get it this good or this different. So what is Agile? And this is how I kind of feel about Agile. It can cover a lot of things. It's an umbrella of methodologies. You have Scrum, Kanban, Lean, XP, but these are methodologies. To me, the methodologies and frameworks don't make a project agile. It's these people, it's your team, and you can make it agile. You know, I could come into your company tomorrow. We're going to run Scrum, yay! I could set up your stand-ups, your planning sessions, your retrospectives. Would you be any more agile than the day before when I hadn't been there? No, probably not. Because it's all about the understanding, getting buy-in, getting people wanting to do this, and actually understanding why they're doing this. So let's have a look at the team. So it's quite interesting. At Yale University, there's a programming course that was renowned for having the hardest assessments. And the professor there, instead of making it easier and getting more people into his program, he wanted to know if there was a relationship between how long people worked on an assignment and what grade they got. So do some people work for hardly any time and get an A? Some people work for hours and get an A. Do you think there's a relationship between that? There's not. Some people were spending 10 hours, they got an A. Some people were spending an hour and they got an A. And as a company, which person would you be hiring? Exactly, you'd want the hour. So there's a 10-to-1 difference in what grade you got and how long it took. So let's amplify this to a team of people. Think about how many people are in your team. So is the slowest team going to be 10 times slower than the fastest team? So it's got IBM thinking, and they did an experiment on this. And what they discovered is very interesting. They gave teams pieces of work. The fastest team completed the work in a week. How long do you think it took the slowest team?
A week.
2,000 weeks. The slowest team was 2,000 times slower than your fastest team.
Hang on, you've got to quantify that. 2,000 weeks, that's 10 years?
They let
it run for 10 years.
So this is effort, not elapsed.
Effort, yeah.
You have to adjust it for people.
Yeah, sorry. So you can see that if you focus on the individual, you can get 10% improvement. If you start working as a team to try and improve the team, you're going to have a lot more noticeable improvements quicker. Another debate is team size. So Lawrence Putnam noticed that if you had more than 20 people in the project, it took about 5 times longer than a small project to finish it. And he thought it was quite interesting, so he did more studying. I'm going to explain, I am a scientist by background. I like my data, I like my graphs, so it will be popping up in my talk, so I apologise for non-sciencey people. So he took it a bit further, and he looked at 500 middle-sized projects over quite a lot of companies. And all the teams were creating new software, not rebranding old software. So he split up the teams by team size, so he looked at teams of 3 to 7, and then more than 9, so 9 to 20. And he discovered that the 3 to 7 took 25% of the effort than the teams of 9 plus. So he was finding out that large groups, even though you've got more people, they were doing less, which made him start looking at communication paths. So you can see here, if you've got 2 people, you've only got 1 communication path. If we up it to 4 people, we've got 6. If you've got 10 people, there's 45 communication paths. So if your team size is 10, you need to have 45 different conversations to make sure you know what everyone is doing for the whole team to understand. That's quite hard.
Surely only if you discuss it one-to-one.
Yeah, hence you have your stand-ups to try and reduce this. So this is why a lot of Agile companies are coming up with what's the optimal team size, and it's 7 plus or minus 2. And they were saying less than 5, you might not have all the skill sets you need. More than 9, you might start getting your knowledge silos, you're going to start seeing communication issues. And the other interesting thing is, you're working on a project and it's running late. What do your managers tend to do?
Get more people.
Put more money in it, well, you have to work longer hours, or throw people on it. And then you look at Brooks' law, which actually says, the more people you throw at it, the slower you're going to get, because you need to get that person up to speed, and you will only develop as quick as your slowest developer, because you're all going to have to take time out to explain the knowledge base, get them up to speed. So if it's a short project, actually adding more people is going to be slightly detrimental to it. If your project's over a long period of time, it's not quite as bad. And I keep talking to you about a team. Who's actually in this team? And this does depend on what methodology you're using. So if you look at Rachel's talk earlier, they run in XP, the team is developers. If you're running in Scrum, you'll probably have a Scrum Master, product owner. To me, a team is a cross-functional team. You'll have people who can do analysis work, testing work, development work. Whether that's separate people or the same person, to me it doesn't matter, as long as you've got all of those areas covered. And the process. So I went into a company, I'm not going to name names, met up with their project manager. We've implemented Scrum a year ago. We've been doing it for a year, by the book. And he was very excited. And I kind of went, oh, okay. Right. And I went, great. Well, what comes out of your retrospectives? Well, they want to do different things. And I went, well, why can't they? Well, then it's not Scrum. So we worked together to actually go, okay, let's start actually acting on the things that your team is saying. He had 3 teams. I went, let's tweak it. So I would expect all 3 teams to be different. What makes one team work quickly might not be what gets the other team working quickly. So we adjusted it with the retrospectives. They slowly brought things in, they adopted it, and they started seeing some improvements. So for me, for a team to be effective, they need to own the process. They need to be regularly looking at it, adopting it, changing it, to be making sure it's working right for the people who are actually in that team. And visibility. If you're not co-located, I still think for the people who are located in one place, having a physical board is a must. As a team, you decide what columns you want. This isn't a static board. It can change depending as you grow. You can add columns, remove columns. You talk about it. You might have your parking lot, so what are your blockers? So that people can see that. People might be able to walk past that and go, actually, I can probably fix that. I'm not on your team, but actually, fine. That's something I can deal with. You might have your metrics up there, so your cumulative flow, burn down, burn up. Who's in the team? What are they assigned to? And it's quite interesting. I went to a talk last week, and she was mentioning about making sure that your tasks can be completed on a daily basis. And she's a scientist by background as well. So she went into a lot more of the chemical reasons, but I'm just going to go into the not chemical reasons. By having a task in progress and you complete it on a daily basis, you get a feeling of success. And if you get that every day, you get happier. It makes you more productive. So if there are tasks in here that you know you're not going to complete, how can we get those completed today? Can we pair up? Can I get extra help with this? And she said the mission is to try and make sure that this is like a today column, and at the end of today everything can move over, and if not, how can we help to ensure that? By getting those little daily successes, you actually start delivering a much quicker, and you'll get more done in your sprint. Aligning direction. How many people who are working on something has a product vision statement? So this is a really, really high level vision of the direction the team is meant to be working towards and what they're working on, and the why. So, who is it for? What do they need? What are we calling it? What type of product is it? Why would you buy it? What's its competitor? And how is it different and better than its competitor? So when I've come into a company, if you're in the middle of a project, I try and get the whole stakeholders and the team together, and individually I get them to write this for whatever they're working on post-it notes, stick it all up on the wall, realise how different it all is, and then try and get them together to write it as a group. Ideally you do it at the beginning of a project, you stick it up on the wall, and if anything you're working on doesn't sort of match towards this, why are you working on it? So an example of one, this is BlackBerry's one, so an interesting choice I have to say. Business email users who want to better manage the increasing number of messages they receive when out of the office. BlackBerry is a mobile email solution that provides a real-time link to their desktop emailing for sending, reading and responding to important messages. Unlike other mobile email solutions, BlackBerry is wearable, secure and always connected. The advantage of this is, if it's up, it's visible, you all know what you're working towards. From this you can then write your goals, your critical success factors, put those up in your area where you're working as well. Has anyone heard of story mapping? Okay, so this is something Jeff Patton came out with. Again, best at the beginning of a project, but it's never too late. And it's a way of aligning the team, your stakeholders, what are you actually delivering? So you've got your backbone, and these are the things that your product will be touching on. So you might call them features, epics, it's areas that you need to cover. Walking skeleton is what's the minimum I can deliver that touches on all of these features that I can deliver. So also known as your minimal viable product. Once you've got that, you can put out the other stories that you would need to put under the features. As a team, prioritise them. How important are they? If you've got multiple stakeholders, you get the arguments out early, it's visible, and then you can block them into milestones, releases, however your company calls it. And again, put this somewhere visible. And these are all just techniques to help you ensure that everyone has a similar understanding of what you're delivering and the why. Why are you coming to work today? What are you actually doing? When you go into places, I've tended to find, I like to do a sort of a catch up with people. I do it on a one-to-one basis just to get their opinions of what they're delivering. And this is what I always see. So by using these techniques, hopefully you get to this point because you get to the same understanding. When I did my practice run, I did do a game here, and I've got a 25% failure rate of the game. So I'm going to try it anyway with you guys, because hopefully 75% of you it will work. Can you all stand up, please? Because it tends to work better when you're standing. Put your right arm up, straight, and draw a big circle clockwise. That's the way I go. And can you slowly lower your arm, but make sure this bit is still pointing upwards. Bring your arm down. And when it's below your face, have a look at the direction of the circle. And if you've done it right, it's going anti-clockwise. If it's not going anti-clockwise, you're in my 25% there where it doesn't work. So it's all about perception. So you're allowed to sit down again. So depending where you are, And depending how you're looking at the project, your perception is different. By having these things up and visible, hopefully you align everyone and you're working towards the same target. Whose didn't that work with, by the way? It's about, okay. Practice at home. It does really work, I promise. How can you optimise the team? Does anyone recognise these fine bunch of people? Well done. Also, when I was doing this, I was doing it to non-British people, so they really didn't have a clue. So this is Dave Brailsford, and he was the cycling coach for the British cycling team. And he's a very interesting coach. He believes in the aggregation of marginal gains. So what he did, he actually came in before Beijing and started working on this, and he predicted in 5 years he would have a successful team that were winning all the gold medals. He managed it in 3 years by doing this very simple thing. So he looked at absolutely anything that affected the cyclists. So obviously the fitness, their training, their nutrition. Makes sense. And he'd tweak it just by a little bit, trying to make it slightly better. Then he looked at sleeping patterns. Was there a specific pillow that helped them sleep better? Was there anything else that made them perform better? So before any race, the night before, they all got a phone call back to their family because that all seemed to improve their performance. He changed the wheels on their bike, and they only made a difference of milliseconds, but add up all these milliseconds and they began to win. He helped with the redesigning of the helmets. And it's very similar to if you play golf and you get someone to help you with your swing. It's a 2mm difference normally between a good shot and an excellent shot. But you need someone to come in and sort of help you work out where those little differences are. So he would ask them, what do you want to win? Where are you now? How would you prioritise it? So this is where you want to be in 2 years' time. Let's work backwards and work out how we can achieve that bit by bit. What's stopping us getting gold? And by these aggregation of marginal gains, he helped them achieve it. Bradley Wiggins won gold medals and the Tour de France in 1 year, which is unheard of, especially for Britain. So with the teams, I'm not a Scrum Master, but with the teams I've been working with, I've worked with Scrum Master and they've nominated a team that they all really respect. And they analyse the team. What made them so great? Okay, well, how can we be better? What can we change? What can we optimise? Where are the little tweaks we can do just to be that 1% better? And let's keep adding on those 1%. And it's not an overnight thing. It takes time. I'm quite an advocate of training. It does depend where you work to the budgets you get. High Speed 2, before they started implementing High Speed 2, they all got sent on Agile training courses. The whole company, bit by bit. The whole project team that was working on it. And it aligned their thinking. They understood the process they were using. Even the finance and marketing guys understood what they were doing. And it's really helpful. It doesn't normally happen like that. But if you can, you're starting a new project, you've got a new team, you're working with people in the business, if it's possible, get them all sent on a training so they all understand why you're doing the things you're doing, why do you need more of their involvement, why do you need them to keep seeing the stuff you're working on, getting the feedback. If you can't do this, if you came to Rachel's speech, they do they do talks fortnightly where you're interested in something and you can present to the team. When I was at Valtech, we had brown bags every Friday, so we come back to the office and present on stuff we're interested. So I had guys teaching me about Akka and Scala, which I'll never use, but I learnt something. So it's a good way of sharing information. You've got meetups where you can meet other people who are probably having similar issues to you. So there are other sources if you can't do it formally. Your working environment's very important. Not everyone gets to be co-located, but when you are working with people, open plan is brilliant. You can overhear conversations, you know what's going on. You normally fix more things by actually accidentally overhearing a conversation than someone coming to talk to you about something. So if it's not open plan, if you're not sitting together, it's a lot harder to do that. You need wall spaces to put up the information. What are you working on? What are you doing? What's your project? Where's your board? So actually this is Spotify's office. They've even got breakout areas for where they can discuss problems. And you have to remember, your office is not your product. So stop treating it like one. I work in a very lovely building, and up until recently, well actually we still can't put things on the walls, but we've got whiteboards in, and it's brilliant, and it's made a difference. So it is little steps to help increase visibility. So, pairing. It's quite an interesting one. So if you're an XP, with Rachel's at Unruly, everyone pairs. At Menlo, everyone pairs and they rotate. Personally, at Valtech, we always paired when we were a consultancy. And you need to sell this to your businesses that you're going to. Why do I want 2 people at a computer? That's not very efficient. So back to the data. So this is a study Alistair Cockburn and Laurie Williams did. And they had 3 programs that they wanted to run. They got individuals to run it and people pairing. So on the first one they did, the pair was 60% slower. It's the first time they've worked together. They're getting used to each other. You kind of expect it to be slower. The second and third, there's only about 15% difference between an individual coding to a paired person. Then we look at the test cases passed. So even from program 1, they're passing more programs. They're passing more of the test because you're discussing it. You're coming up with different ideas, maybe better solutions because you're talking it through. You've got someone looking over your shoulder as you type, so you've got quality being built in. So whatever the difference between, it might take longer, but if we're automatically passing more tests, that's less bugs, that's less defects. So we won't have to fix as many. So we're saving time there. Interestingly, people who were pairing seemed happier. It's a byproduct of it. They said it was great because they could discuss things. They were learning so much more because they're sitting next to someone different, they learned about them, they learned about their strengths, their weaknesses, and they got to share knowledge. And they wrote less lines of code. That's less code to have to support. There's less code to have to test. Also, if you're pairing, if someone actually leaves, you've got a whole team of people who actually know what the rest of that code is doing. If you're working individually and that person goes, it's going to take time for someone to get back into that code and understand what it's doing. And as a team, you need to help influence direction. You've got a voice, use it. You've got ideas, voice them. Depends where you work. You don't need a suggestion box. Talk about it. Some places maybe you do need a suggestion box. But everyone has different ideas, and unless you say it, it will never change. And this is something I used to do with teams when I go in. So every day we do like a happiness scale. And it's something quite arbitrary, but actually it's quite interesting the data you can get from it. We're human, we all have bad days. There are days we wake up, we just don't want to go to work. It's fine. But if you start seeing the whole team being here, there's something wrong. So you know that there's a question you need to be asking. And if you don't address it, if you start getting those 1s and 2s, 2 weeks later you're going to get a drop in productivity because there's something fundamentally wrong that hasn't been addressed. So it's a great, easy way to see how people are feeling, is there a problem, and getting it talked about early. I would love to try this. Unfortunately, my team weren't quite as keen as me as doing this. Team building is a brilliant way of getting to know who you work with better. If you know your team and you actually go out drinking with them or have lunch with them, you're more likely to go the extra mile for them. You're more likely to be more patient with them. You get better performing teams if you're actually friends. It doesn't have to be a big exercise like this. One of the coaches I've worked with brought in a yoga teacher, so the whole group did yoga, and actually went quite well, though everyone was very cynical before it happened. You could do it in a retrospective. One of the Scrum Masters I worked with does speed dating retrospectives. So you've got 3 minutes. How can I motivate you? You discuss it for 3 minutes, thank you, and then you ask the question back. Because different things will motivate different people, and it gets you a better understanding of how to work with your team members and get the most out of them, and how they can get the most out of you. You don't manage people, you manage things. You should lead people. So this is Grace Hooper. She's an American computer scientist and was also in the US Navy. Also coined the term bugging, as she found a moth while she was trying to get a computer working. It was stuck in the relay. It's a very true comment. So if you look at manufacturing, so this is a manufacturing plant in Fremont, California. It was run by General Motors, and they had the worst workers, they said, in the world. They drank on the job, they didn't turn up for work, they put Coke bottles, beer bottles in the car doors, causing a rattle. So the plant closed. Toyota, trying to get into the American market, there's a spare manufacturing plant, so they opened it in 1984. And they brought back all of the original workers, but none of the managers. They sent the workers to the Toyota production system in Japan. And soon they were as productive as the Japanese, as little defects as the Japanese car market. And what was the difference? The Toyota production system, they asked the people who were working there, how would you improve this process? How would you do it differently? And it became a collaboration rather than this is your job, this is what you need to do. And it caused a massive difference. And you need to utilise time. So if you're doing work where you have to use your brain, think, context switching is a very bad idea. If you're working on one project, no context switching. But as you have more projects, you can see only 5% of your time be spent on per project if you're doing 5 projects. Because you're constantly having to get back into the domain. Where was I in the code? What was I doing? So if you are a project manager, you've got to deliver 3 projects. You want to deliver 1 project at a time, not all at once. And the other thing is, if you're constantly context switching, you never get into system 2 thinking. So Daniel Kahneman came up with this fast and slow thinking. System 1 thinking it's automatic. It's something you do every day. You make snap decisions. You're not really going into details. System 2 thinking is where you're actually analysing the problem. You're coming up with answers. And supposedly you've only got 2 hours of system 2 thinking per day because it takes a lot out of you. So if you're constantly context switching, you don't get to use any of that time. And it's a bug. So again, if you find a bug, fix it straight away. IBM did a test with bugs, and on average, the bugs that you found, if it took an hour to fix today, 3 weeks later, a similar bug would take 24 hours to fix. Because you've got to get back into the code. What was I doing? Where was I? So if you find bugs, stop, fix it. Don't keep going. If you've got technical debt, don't let it keep building up. Use your voice. Suggest actually perhaps we should address this now. Let's not let it get too bad. And innovation. So Alan had a very good tweet this morning that he doesn't like hack days. I quite like hack days, but they're not a solution to a problem. Hack day should be something that is a fun day where you can practice your code. It's a safe environment. It gives you some time out.
Try telling that to a tester.
So like Google have their 80-20 rule. Unruly, you've got your gold card time. Some of the places I've been, after a planning session, they had the half a day to do what they wanted to work on, whether it be working with technical debt, optimizing performance, or actually doing something completely non-project related that they'd then present back at a session later. It's really great to have time to think about things where you're not having the pressure on you. It's quite hard to sell this to your company, but a lot of places are doing it, and it's making happier developers. Happier developers develop quicker, so in the end, actually, you're not losing as much time. So if you can try and go, well, let's try it for a month. Let's see how it impacts our work. And if it impacts our work more than X amount, then okay, fine. But if it doesn't, then we can still do it. Okay, so I've gone through why managers want Agile, what is it, looked at the team, how you align direction, optimise team, and utilising the time. So in summary, managers don't really care if it's waterfall or Agile. They want success. And if they've seen graphs like this, so this is from the Chaos Manifesto, Agile looks like it's doing have more successful projects. Some managers might even want happy teams. So hope we get more of those. And it's about the team. Let's work on that. Let's get that bit right. And when that bit's going well, the other stuff will start falling into place. So identify those 2mm changes and let's work on those. Have a team identity and a purpose. Influence the direction of your project. Make communication easier within your team so everyone knows what you're doing and reduce those knowledge silos. And let people see what you're working on. Be proud of what you're working on. And make the most out of your time. Try and have those daily successes. And half done it is as good as not done at all. Demo often. Make sure you're going the right direction with your product. Reduce the multitasking you have to do. Try and do it right the first time, otherwise it becomes very expensive when you try and fix it later. And innovate. How many people have you had New Year's resolutions? And how many of you kept them for longer than 2 weeks? Ooh. So don't try and do this all at once. The average, if you try and change everything too much, the average length that you'll keep your resolutions for is 3 days. So do it little and often. So why are we doing this? Why have we moved to Agile? We're trying to reduce this. We're trying to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We're all working towards the same thing. Is there any questions? And my contact details. Yep.
I've just got an observation really based on the last three sort of talks about Agile and how we apply it. And Rachel mentioned that with her methodology that there's no testing as such.
Yep.
Testers. You've said about hack days are really good fun. Alan said try telling that to a tester. And Rachel said also about we monitor progress and we find problems in life.
Yeah.
And typically finding the problem might cost the company more money.
Yes.
As opposed to finding it when you're testing.
Yes.
If you have testers. And I've come from a traditional big corporate organisation into a 12-man unit, which is Agile. And it's just interesting to try and find that balance.
So, I mean, we've still got testers in our teams, but we try and do ATDD. So we're trying to let's automate where we can, but there's some bits we still need manual testers.
Yeah, we do as well, yeah.
There's some research from Larry McKinnon, and he was at Raleigh, that shows the highest performing teams have no testers. And the lowest performing teams have no testers. And it appears that in a high performing team, you may not need testers, because you might, as Rachel said, be doing the testing. but lower performing teams may, they need the testing to keep them anywhere. I think the scenario you describe, I've seen it before, you need testing because your initial quality is so low. But I wouldn't say get rid of your testers and become high performing.
Exactly.
High performing and think about whether your test ratio is right.
And if you want references on where I've got some stuff from, here's some further reading if interested. Thank you.